High levels of perceived stigma surrounding attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, are directly correlated with negative outcomes for people afflicted with the disorder. Yet, compared to other mental illnesses, stigma surrounding ADHD is underinvestigated by researchers and underlooked by our society as a whole. This is particularly alarming considering the results of a survey conducted by the National Survey of Children's Health in 2016, which found that there were 6.1 million children in the United States diagnosed with the disorder. Why is the issue of stigma surrounding ADHD so underlooked, and what are the consequences of this? In order to tackle the question of why ADHD stigmatization is so underlooked, we must first understand how people diagnosed with ADHD perceive themselves to be stigmatized. We can later see how closely this lines up with reality, deduce why this is the case, and reflect upon the consequences of stigmatization. A study by NSCH and colleagues surveyed a group of adults with ADHD to see, among other things, how they perceive themselves to be stereotyped by the public. Their responses displayed a common theme of perceived illegitimacy of their disorders. Examples include beliefs that ADHD is a childhood disorder not seen in adults, ADHD is invented by drug companies, and adults with ADHD simulate their symptoms. Perceived stigma becomes truly damaging when it is internalized by those with the disorder. Of the adults with ADHD surveyed in the study conducted by NSCH and colleagues, about 23% reported a high level of internalized stigma when measured by the Internalized Stigma of Mental Illness scale. However, it is possible that this is an underestimate, and this becomes apparent when looking at an outlier in the data, stereotype endorsement. This determining subscale does not account for some ADHD-specific ideological stereotypes, such as low effort and inadequate parenting. This can explain the low percentage of stereotype endorsement, 2%, compared to the other subscales. Stereotype endorsement is most certainly an important component of internalized stigma. I know this because I have struggled with self-doubt in spite of my formal diagnosis of ADHD, largely because of how I have been treated in the past by my peers and teachers in such contexts as receiving extra time on the test. Nonetheless, stereotype endorsement is but one determinant of internalized stigma, which as a whole has been shown to have direct correlates with higher depression, lower self-esteem, and higher symptom severity. The most effective way of combating a problem caused by lack of education is, of course, to educate. Implementing mental health education into school curriculums is a vital first step. Stigmatization has disastrous effects during childhood, as difficulties at school are the most frequent reason for children's diagnostic evaluation. Yet despite early diagnosis, children with ADHD are themselves often uneducated about their illnesses, especially with regard to their medication. Some speculate that this can be partially attributed to the misuse of ADHD medication by the general public, which serves to undermine the legitimacy of the disorder. Therefore, when they are stigmatized by authority figures they are told to look up to, significant damage is done to their confidence and self-image. These problems continue into adulthood as well. There's a belief shared among many in higher education that ADHD is not to be taken as seriously as other disorders, as indicated by a study conducted which found that 30% of surveyed university professors were not in favor of providing accommodations for students with ADHD. Stigmatization of ADHD is unlikely to completely disappear anytime soon, especially if its legitimacy continues to remain in question. Thankfully, it is within the power of every human being to make a conscious effort to treat everyone with the dignity and respect they deserve.